All right, I'm on the phone early this holiday with head coach Mark Shields from MDI High School. And Coach, tell us what time we're taping this at 7:30. Obviously you're wearing swishy pants today, so you probably didn't even have to get really dressed. Tell us about what you're practicing today.
Yep. So we're having the guys come in 8 to 10. This being Monday morning, it's going to be a typical Monday practice for us. Normally we would practice after school, but the Monday practice typically is we have the kids work out for about an hour in the weight room, and then we go down to Mark Arnold's room. He's our tech guy and my defensive coordinator, and then we break down tape. We'll look at our film from the Madison game, learn from that, and then we'll start looking at tape against Oceanside, our next opponent. And then if there's time left over, we'll try to go up on the field and walk through some stuff that we're thinking about, game plan type stuff for the week, just to get the kids, acclimated, I guess you say, to the game plan and what we're thinking we're gonna do, and that will change throughout the week usually, but we'll tweak stuff here and there, but just to give them an idea of what we're thinking and get their minds thinking about that game plan versus Oceanside.
Well, Friday night, just a fantastic game. Of course, MDI coming away with a 20-19 victory. Excuse me. Let's kind of talk about some of the highlights. First of all, the opening kickoff. Madison chose to receive, and then a fumble, and Colby Lee falls on it. Tell us about that in terms of momentum.
Yeah, it couldn't have worked out any better to start the game. We wanted to defer if we won the toss. We wanted to kick off, and sure enough, they win the toss, and they decide that they want to receive, and that's always huge, to get a turnover on the opening kickoff, because it gives one team momentum immediately, before you even get the offenses and defenses on the field. And, fortunately we were able to get a drive and punch that in, and, and then, not knowing what was going to happen throughout the game, it just, there was just so much that happened. I had to look at the game tape. Obviously I break it down anyway for the kids and their positions and that sort of stuff. But just watching it the next day, my parents came down to watch the game, and that was pretty cool that they were there for it. But my dad and I get up, I couldn't sleep much, Friday night into Saturday morning. And he's an early riser, so we're up at 5:30 in the morning at my kitchen table watching it, because it was sort of a blur. Throughout the game, and you kind of remember the
you had eye problems too.
What's that?
You had eye problems too.
Yeah, I had a hard time seeing the field anyway, and we just sat there at the kitchen table and had our coffee and watched the game, and there was a lot of stuff apparently I had forgotten, so it was quite a night for sure.
Well, let's talk about Chris Farnsworth's night. So Chris punched in the opening drive, so he scored there, and then he has the ball. He just got obliterated on a hit, and the ball popped out and went to one of the Madison safeties, I think Violet, who ran the ball back 70 yards. So that gave them the lead, but then he comes back and has an interception and scores 2 more touchdowns. Talk about first of all, that fumble is not his hit, because he just got popped, and then to come back and score 2 more touchdowns and an interception, what a heck of a night for Chris.
Yeah, he had an amazing night. There was so much that happened throughout the game that he was part of. And you're right, that turnover was one of those things. It wasn't poor execution on our part. It was just great execution on theirs. And, we run an option to our left. Our quarterback's right-handed, so that's always tricky because he's got to pitch with his left hand. And, they had Andrew stop, so he pitches it to Chris. And they were all over that, and they popped Chris just as he got the ball, no fault of his or Andrew's. And the ball pops out, and there they go to the house for a touchdown, and I'm thinking, oh boy, there's a minute and a half to go in the first half. You know, I thought worst case scenario we're going to go in halftime down a score. Now we're down 2 scores. You know, can we come back against a team like Madison? You know, 2 scores and try to stop them. Who would have, you know, thought that we could have stopped them from scoring again after that score? So, yeah, Chris was just phenomenal all night. A lot of kids were. I mean, you look at on tape, and you know, a guy like Jacob Ritter, who, you know, you're not going to see it if you're watching the game because he's in the trenches, but he is just blowing kids off the ball on the offensive line. I mean, those big runs that Chris had were our straight-ahead dive, and you think, geez, those weren't working really early in the game, and why did they work so well late in the game? And sometimes it's a real simple game when you look on tape when your right guard is just blowing kids off the ball, and, you know, Chris is hitting the hole really hard, and, you know, he's a real good north and south, so-called north and south runner, a straight-ahead kind of guy. He hits that hole real hard, and he just had a phenomenal night. And, you know, like I said, I mean, I could go on and on about different guys, but Chris was definitely one of our top guys for the night.
There was, let me correct, it wasn't Violet, it was Stephen Willett who ran the ball back. Now, Madison kind of cut through the defense that first half. What changes did you make at halftime, or did Mark Arnold make? Because MDI's defense really stiffened, and then we're going to talk about the goal line stance. But what changes did you make at halftime?
You know, you're probably not going to believe this, and our listeners probably won't, but we made no changes. We went up to the kids, and they were disappointed. You know, we thought about it. Without that fumble, you know, they've scored 2 touchdowns in the first half, which isn't fabulous defensively, but it's not bad against a team like that.
Right.
You know, so we're thinking, let's not panic here, because one of these scores is, you know, off our offense. You know, we fumble the ball, they pick it up, they run it back. So now they're, you know, they have 19 points, but really they should be sitting there with 2 scores. So, you know, halftime, and I really didn't have to say anything. The coaches didn't have to say anything. By the time we got up to the field where the kids were waiting, they had said plenty.
Well, it was an extra long half, too, because of the Hall of Fame induction.
Right, exactly. So we gave the kids plenty of time, and by the time we got up there, Graham Good, I mean, I don't know if he had anything left in the tank by the time he was talking to the kids and yelling and screaming, and, you know, not negatively, but just it was, but I heard him. I was coming up over the field, you know, up over that hill to the practice field, and I heard something like, I'm not going to be sitting over there next year talking about what if. He said, we're going to make this happen tonight. And it was true. And then I got up there and I said, hey, whatever Graham said, I'll double it. And I said, guys, this has nothing to do with X's and O's. This all has to do with our execution and, more importantly, our effort. And, I didn't think we tackled real well in the first half. You know, those backs are strong and they're fast. And we were a lot of arm tackling in the first half, and those kids, you know, they took it seriously in the second half, and they started wrapping up, and they were team tackling, and they were swarming to the ball, and it all had to do with effort and emotion, and that's what it was. That whole game was effort and emotion from our kids, just not going to be denied, and sure enough, I mean, it just goes to show you that if you just keep playing, you know, for 4 quarters, you give yourself an opportunity to win, and both teams did that. Both teams played hard for 4 quarters, and we were fortunate enough to come out on top.
You score 2 unanswered touchdowns in the second half. So all of a sudden then, Madison takes over on their own 37-yard line, and they march down to the MDI 1 as the Trojans' defense stiffened, and you guys ended up taking over the ball with 3:55 left in the game. Tell us a little bit about that goal line stance.
Yeah, so, you know, we, if I think I'm correct, and I think we took a timeout right before it. So Mark Arnold had time to get the defense, you know, over to the sideline to him so he could really talk to the kids. And, you know, we brought in a little different personnel. We brought in Gilbert Isaacs, and you know, Gilbert's a pretty big dude.
Big boy, yeah.
And we put him right in the middle of the defense. And basically the philosophy was, listen, if they hit a pass on the outside, so be it. If they get outside with one of their running backs, so be it. But they, are not going to get up the chute on us, and we loaded the middle.
Packed it.
Yep. Credit to Mark, and sure enough, the kids came up with a huge defensive play, and we were able to keep them out of the end zone. Probably the play of the night, really, when you look back on it, and able to get the ball back and run some time off the clock.
Well, I was up in the press box. Taylor Bigler, who from the Islander, was up there, and I said to her, all right, so what do you do? She says, well, I kick a field goal. And I'm going, well, that makes sense. But obviously they weren't looking at it. I'm thinking, gosh, do they have the stones to try a screen pass on the outside? Because I'm looking at everything packed in, and sure enough, they went for it, stuffed it. So now you've got the ball with 3:55 left, and I'm thinking, all right, all you got to do is run the clock out. So you get a first down, and then they stiffen, you've got a punt. They take over on their own 47-yard line with 40.8 seconds left to go. And I'm going, oh, my God, this reminds me of the Cardiac Kids a couple of years ago.
Yeah, for sure. And, we obviously did not want to give the ball back to them. And I thought, okay, we got one first down. I knew they still had 2 timeouts. I thought, okay, we're going to have to get a second first down. And sure enough, I think we got some sort of holding penalty or something weird. So now it's like, because they know we're going to run the ball, and they know we're going straight ahead, and we're trying to kill the clock and get rid of their timeouts. And so they stiffen and defensively, and you're right. So now we have to punt the ball, which, we're only up 1 point.
And it was a low snap.
Yes. So we got a low snap. And I thought Madison was going to bring the house,
right.
Defensively. I thought they were going to go for the block. I would have, that deep in our own end with not much time left, but they didn't. So they played the return. So we had a low snap. Thank goodness Croy Albee fields it well, gets a good punt off.
Took a MDI bounce.
Yeah, he got it left away from their returner, and it bounced out of bounds. So we executed that very well, besides, our snap was a little low. And now it's like, okay, we're on defense. All right, guys, we got to stop these guys. Obviously, they're going to be throwing the ball, and a couple plays, and we're in good shape. And then they get a first down. There was a lot that happened, and next thing you know, they had a guy down the sideline.
It was a fantastic catch, and they're down now to the 5-yard line. I think it was with I don't know. There were just seconds left to go.
Yep. So I'm thinking they're probably setting up the field goal, but they had enough time to run, a couple more plays, but they didn't have any timeouts left. And sure enough, it just worked out such that the play they ran, Elijah Joyce comes, our linebacker, and I don't think even Mark Arnold sent him, but he went, and sure enough, he gets a hold of the quarterback, and he flings it over to one of their running backs, and if that kid drops the ball, then they got another play.
Right.
They might line up to kick a field goal, or they might try to run another play, and sure enough, the kid makes an amazing catch, and Graham Good's there to tackle him, and they have no more time. The clock's ticking, and everybody's just like, please keep running, and sure enough, it gets down to 0 and win the game. So, there was just so much that could have happened either way. I'm sure Madison's down there reliving it over and over. I've done that before, and I think back. You were with me way back in the day. We're down to Morse.
Yes.
And it's 4th and a long yard, and I'm thinking, geez, we have a good field goal kicker, and we tried to kick it, and sure enough, we shanked it, and we lost the game. So it's such a tough call as a coach. These are high school kids. They're not, college or professional kickers. This is not what they do on a regular basis.
Right.
Their kicker is their tight end / defensive end, and he's fairly inconsistent. He missed an extra point that night. Even the ones that he makes, he sort of lobs them up over the goalpost. So I'm sure the coach is thinking, we're going to try to punch this bad boy in, and sure enough, he probably thought he had another play coming to him, and it didn't work out that way.
Well, I know that there was concern about the clock time, and they actually put a couple seconds back on, although I didn't I don't remember seeing it run off, but I was caught up in the game. So I know that right before that, there was a concern about clock time.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many seconds were left on the clock when they ran that.
It was like 4 seconds, and that was about it. And they had put it, I think it had ticked down to like maybe 3 something, and they put it back up to 4 something.
Okay.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, biggest win in the program, biggest win in a long time. But certainly is going to rank up there in top 3 wins in the program.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's definitely one of the top wins. And of course, it seems bigger too the way it unfolded that night. I mean, it was like the perfect storm, I guess. I mean, you had the number 1 seed coming to us. It's homecoming. We're right there with them. We only have 1 loss. We're thinking it's going to be a good game, and then the way it unfolds, and and the way we won. I mean, I've been hearing all kinds of people saying it was, it's maybe the best football game I've ever watched. Talking professional, collegiate, high school, and so it's big. You're right, and I mean, you look at the program's history. Obviously we've gotten into 2. Tookie McKay got a team into the Eastern Maine Championship, and then we did it back in 2008. So it ranks right up there with big wins. But once again, you got to think, it wasn't even a playoff win.
Right.
It's a regular season game. So it's big. But I'm going to talk a lot to the kids today about let's not make this the highlight of our season. Let's remember that this was a game, a regular season game. It was big as far as putting us in a good position, but we still have a lot of work to do to get to our goals.
2 tough games remaining in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, we can move on now talking about Oceanside. This team is 4-2. I look at all the games that they've played and the scores that they've played against common opponents that we've played, and the scores are all right there. The only score that was different was the first game of the year, which seemed years ago.
Yeah. They
lost to Madison by 4 or 5 touchdowns. But they go down to Winslow and lose by 2 scores at Winslow. They beat up on Herman last weekend by pretty much the same score we had against Herman. So this is a good football team. They are much better than they were last year. They had pretty much everybody back from last year, and they were a playoff contender last year. A lot of weapons. They have really good skilled kids, and they have good kids up front. And we have to go to them. And, the fear is that we use so much emotion and energy to beat such a good team out, in Madison, that all of a sudden this week we just go down there and tank because, all that energy was used for that game. So we really have to work hard this week to refocus and, get ready for a really good Oceanside team on their home field.
Senior night.
Yep, it'll probably be senior night.
It is.
Is it? Okay, and our kids have never played on that field, so it's going to be, we're going to be on foreign land. There's just a lot of things that we have to overcome to try to get a win down there. So it's a huge week for us, no doubt, and it does concern me that, because having such a big win over Madison, that we could go down there and tank it, and that win over Madison doesn't mean as much.
Who do you award the game ball to?
Yeah, that's a great question. The staff, we've been talking all weekend, and, geez, there's just so many names that have come up, and, there's so many just great performances by our kids, and, ultimately you want to give it to every kid you have. Even the guys on the bench, they were all over it,
Oh, they were firing up the crowd. I mean, yep. I saw the kids running down and getting the crowd just pumped up, and you could hear it on the video.
Yep, yeah, they were right into it, and they work hard during the week to prepare our starters, and some of those guys still get on the field. Sam Huff, because Gilbert Isaac was sick a lot of the week, so Sam ended up starting, and he ended up subbing in a few times. Just a great team player, role player for us right now. He's a sophomore. He didn't play last year, and he's really coming along. But yeah, from a head coaching standpoint, it was for me, because there were so many great performances. For me, it was more of a team aspect, and I think just the leadership from Graham Good. That basically we're not going to be denied this, and he was like that all night long, and then he played great as well. Yeah. I really think it's got to go to Graham, just because of that fact alone, that he was really the inspirational leader. There were a lot of guys that were being strong leaders that night, but he seemed to be the guy that really was most vocal, and this isn't going to happen. We're going to win this football game, sort of thing. And so I'm going to go with Graham Good.
All right. On the road, Friday night, final game of the season is then on the, hard to believe, on the 21st, home against Old Town. What do you want to say to the fans?
Yeah, once again, thank you so much for, your continued support. The homecoming game versus Madison was phenomenal. We had a great crowd. The crowd was loud. They were into it. It was just a great atmosphere, and the kids, they just feed off that so much. It's such an emotional game, and when they're playing in front of a big crowd, they really do get excited. And I know Oceanside, Rockland, that's a long trip. If you can get down there, I think that's going to be a really good football game. And then if not, we'll be back here the following Friday night for senior night versus a really good Old Town team. So if you can get up and see us play and support the kids, it'd be wonderful.
All right, Coach. Have a good week. We'll talk to you on Thursday.
All right, Chris. Thank you. All right, Chris. Thank you. All right, Chris. Thank you.